Welcome back to the cryptoworld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and in this video, I'll be talking about some very interesting charts that help reveal the 4-year Bitcoin halving cycle and show exactly where we are in that cycle. And on top of that, I'll be talking about how the Bitcoin halving is an event that cannot actually be priced in. And as always, I'll be talking about Ethereum later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, starting off on the weekly Bitcoin chart, this is looking at over a decade of Bitcoin history. And obviously, throughout Bitcoin's history, so far, we have seen 3 Bitcoin halvings. The first halving happened late 2012. The second Bitcoin halving happened during around mid-2016. And the third Bitcoin halving happened around mid-2020. And so these Bitcoin halvings happen once every 4 years approximately. And the next Bitcoin halving, the fourth Bitcoin halving, is set to happen around April 2024, so roughly around 7 months from now. And what's very interesting is these Bitcoin halvings actually create these 4-year halving cycles between bull markets and bear markets. And as you can see right here, we usually end up seeing the bear markets right in the middle of the Bitcoin halvings. And so once again, we saw that first Bitcoin halving around late 2012, around November 2012, and the next major bear market happened basically during all of 2014, and then entering into 2015, that was essentially the end of the bear market in terms of the downside price action. But 2015, the year after the bear market, was still basically a transitionary year between the bear market and the next bull markets, because during the year after the bear market, during 2015, we did not really see massive bullish or bearish momentum on the larger scale, and instead the next major bull market didn't really kick off until the next halving, which once again was around mid-2016, more specifically July 2016. And then following that halving, we obviously saw a major bull market, and then of course we saw a major bear market during 2018. And then entering into the beginning of 2019, that was essentially the end of that bear market, but we still didn't really see a major bull market from that point, because overall during 2019 and entering into early 2020, we actually saw some bullish price action and some bearish price action. So not a massive bull market in those years. But then following the third Bitcoin halving, which once again happened around May 2020, following that halving, of course, we saw another major bull market late 2020 entering into early 2021. And then, of course, the next major bear market happened during 2022. And so simply going off this 4-year Bitcoin halving cycle based around the Bitcoin halvings, the end of 2022 entering into early 2023, that was essentially the end of the bear market. But with that being said, we have not really started the famous Bitcoin bull run that we usually see after the halving, because obviously we have not yet seen the next halving. And so essentially right now, based on the cycles, once again, the bear market is over, but we are essentially in that transitionary year between the bear market and the next major bull market. And what's very interesting is if you're taking a look at the weekly Bitcoin RSI, this tells a very similar story, because as you can see here in the RSI, very rarely, just a few times throughout Bitcoin's history, we've seen the weekly Bitcoin RSI enter into oversold territories. And usually this happens around bear market bottoms. Once again, this first happened at the end of 2014, entering into early 2015, right at that bear market bottom. And then if you're looking at the next example where the weekly Bitcoin RSI entered into oversold territories, this happened right at the end of 2018, at the end of the 2018 bear market. And if you're looking at the latest example, that was during around July 2022, which is actually quite interesting, because this happened around the major bottom that happened around June, July 2022. But obviously later in the year, around November 2022, the Bitcoin price did end up making a slightly lower low, below that 17K low, and making a low around 15,500. But as most of you probably remember, the Bitcoin price basically looked like it had already bottomed out before that final November crash. And then, of course, we had the FTX collapse. And so essentially that FTX collapse, considering FTX was a massive crypto exchange, of course, that put the Bitcoin price into a slightly lower low, below the July 2022 low, the June-July low. And so essentially, if it weren't for the FTX collapse, it's possible June/July 2022 could have been the bear market bottom if FTX FTX did not collapse in November 2022, which holds up with the weekly Bitcoin RSI. And so once again, other than that one anomaly, that massive exchange that collapsed back in November 2022, this indicator has held up very well throughout Bitcoin's history as well. And now you might be wondering if the Bitcoin halving is a known event. Of course, everyone knows about the Bitcoin halving. You might be wondering, well, why don't people just price it in now, considering we already know it's going to happen? And well, the problem with pricing in the Bitcoin halving now is due to the mining sell pressure that happens every single day. And so as I said over here on Twitter, newly mined BTC acts as a price ceiling for Bitcoin, and Bitcoin halvings raise that price ceiling. Because in case you didn't already know, right now, as of recording this video, roughly 900 Bitcoin are mined every single day by the Bitcoin miners, because every single day, 144 Bitcoin blocks are mined on average. And right now, the current block reward or block subsidy is 6.25 BTC per block. But of course, after the Bitcoin halving, after the fourth Bitcoin halving, that block subsidy, that block reward will go down to 3.125. And considering there will still be on average 144 Bitcoin blocks mined per day, that would turn out to 450 Bitcoin being mined per day by the Bitcoin miners. And the reason why this is important is because the Bitcoin miners are usually net sellers of Bitcoin, because essentially they're having to sell a lot of Bitcoin in order to pay for their costs, in order to pay for their electricity. And so basically, if people try to price in the next Bitcoin halving right now by buying up a lot of Bitcoin, pushing the price up higher and higher right now, then what would happen is the Bitcoin miners are still mining 900 Bitcoin every day right now, even if people try to price in the halving, which means if the price goes too high before the halving, then the miners still have too much sell pressure. And so essentially, if people try to price in the halving before the halving happens and take the Bitcoin price too high before the halving, then the miners, because they're still mining a lot of Bitcoin every day, that would simply sell all that Bitcoin every single day to bring the price back down. But once again, after the next halving, after the fourth Bitcoin halving, only 450 Bitcoin will be mined on average per day, which means the miners have a lot less Bitcoin that they can actually sell, which means there's a lot less sell pressure. And that massive reduction in sell pressure every single day is not something that we can price in, because of course there's no way to actually reduce sell pressure right now this instant, because the miners are still mining that 900 Bitcoin right now until the Bitcoin halving. And so that's why I said here over on Twitter, the newly mined Bitcoin every single day that the miners are mining acts as a price ceiling for the price of Bitcoin, kind of like a maximum price that we can really go before the miners start bringing us back down. And the Bitcoin halvings simply raise that price ceiling every single Bitcoin halving, as we can see throughout Bitcoin's entire price history. And now staying on the weekly Bitcoin chart, taking a look at the Pi cycle bottom indicator, which is another indicator which actually uses moving averages. And basically, when this green moving average, the green line crosses above the red line, that essentially marks the Pi cycle bottom, which is usually around the bear market bottom. And then when they cross the other way, so when the green line crosses underneath the red line, that usually says basically the bear market is already over, and we are now entering into that transitionary period in between the bear market and the next major bull market. And if you're looking at the first example of when this happened, we saw the Pi cycle bottom indicator flash right at the end of 2014, entering into early 2015 at the end of that bear market. And then we saw that second signal flash later 2015, basically confirming that the bear market is really over and we're about to begin a new bull market in the coming years. And if you're looking at the second example, we saw the Pi cycle bottom indicator flash right at the 2018 bear market bottom. And then we saw the second signal flash, basically confirming that yes, the bear market is over and we are now in that transitionary year in between the bear market and the next major bull market. And if you're looking at the current cycle that we are in right now, once again, this Pi cycle bottom indicator actually flashed back during around June, July 2022. And as I explained earlier in the video, that could have been the bear market bottom if it weren't for the FTX collapse later in the year. And so essentially that one anomaly, that massive exchange that collapsed in 2022, basically made a slightly new bear market bottom below that 17K low that we saw prior back in June. But of course, right now we have already seen the second signal flash, the bear market over signal flash, which once again is technically a signal confirming that yes, the bear market is over and we are now in that transitionary period in between the bear market and the next major bull market. And if you're taking a look at the monthly Bitcoin chart, so each one of these candles is an entire month. And if we're looking at this color scheme right here, this basically maps out the Bitcoin cycles, because essentially around the bear market bottoms, the area of maximum opportunity, this is the dark blue on the chart. And if you're looking at the bull market tops, this is the green on the chart, basically when we're topping out for the bull market. And if you're looking at where we are right now, the Bitcoin price is entering into this red area, which if you look at past halving cycles, this red area always happens after the bear market is actually over, but just before the halving and just before the next major bull market. But in terms of the major bullish price action, the famous bull markets that we see in Bitcoin history, these usually start around the orange to yellow periods, as we can see throughout history. Once again, around these orange to yellow areas in this indicator is usually when we start seeing the major bull market, the major bullish price action start kicking off. And once again, that usually happens after the halving. And so if we're measuring out these previous periods where we stayed in the red area right here, this happened for around half a year back during around 2016. If we're looking at the 2020 example, this happened also around 6 months. And so we could expect to stay in this somewhat transitionary period between the bear market and the bull market over the next 6 months, which could perhaps be the last opportunity to actually accumulate before the next major bull market. So essentially in 6 to 12 months from now, simply based on Bitcoin history, things could really start heating up in around 6 to 12 months from now. And as for the bull market top, if we're measuring out from the beginning of these red zones to that bull market top, this usually happens around 700 days later. Or if we're looking at this next example, once again, this was also around 700 days later. So if we're measuring out 700 days from where we are right now, that puts us around August 2025. And so essentially over the next 6 months or so, we're still in that transitionary period between the bear market and the bull market, which means we can see shorter term trends, perhaps some bearish price action or neutral price action. Once again, not really a major bull market. But then in around 6 to 12 months from now, we could start seeing a lot more bullish price action beginning to build up. And then around mid 2025, based on Bitcoin history, we could expect the Bitcoin bull market top around mid 2025. And if you're looking at the monthly Bitcoin RSI, what's very interesting is right now, the monthly Bitcoin RSI at the time of recording this video is actually dipping back below the 50 level. And usually when the RSI on the monthly time frame is below 50, that is essentially the area of maximum opportunity if you're talking about the longer term trends. And we actually saw something very similar to what we're seeing right now. In the previous cycle, we saw a major dip below 50 in the monthly RSI back during the end of the 2018 bear markets. Just like how in the 2022 bear market, we also saw the monthly RSI dip below 50 towards the end of that bear market. But once again, if you're looking at this previous cycle, we did actually see one last dip below 50 in the monthly Bitcoin RSI, which happened at that COVID crash back during March 2020. And so essentially that was the final opportunity, which happened just before the Bitcoin halving, before the Bitcoin price really started to rise over the next 1 to 2 years or so. And so once again, as I'm recording this video, the monthly Bitcoin RSI is now dipping back below 50, similar to what we saw back here, which means potentially we are entering into that final accumulation opportunity for the Bitcoin cycle, which by the way, could actually last for a few months worth of opportunity for accumulation, because remember, we're on the monthly time frame. We're talking about a 4-year cycle. And so essentially right now and over the coming months, we could see that final opportunity play out for accumulation before the halving and the next major bull market after the halving. And just quickly talking about Ethereum on the weekly time frame, these vertical lines right here are the Bitcoin halvings. And I know the Bitcoin halvings do not have a direct impact on the price of ETH, but usually when Bitcoin starts entering into a bull market and we see all the craze and hype for Bitcoin, that also leads to a lot of hype for the rest of the crypto market, especially the price of ETH, because during those crazy bull markets, we see a lot of newcomers coming into crypto, essentially looking for the next Bitcoin. And so this is why we see a very similar 4-year cycle for the price of ETH as what we saw for Bitcoin just earlier in the video. And so once again, we usually see the major bull markets actually happen after the halvings, and the bear markets are usually happening in between the Bitcoin halvings. And so once again, simply based on the 4-year cycles, it's likely the bear market is already well and truly over, but we are still in that transitionary year between the bear market and the bull market. And if you're looking at the weekly Ethereum RSI, this also entered into oversold territories, just like the bear market bottom in the previous cycle. Once again, this first example happened right at the end of 2018, where we saw the weekly Ethereum RSI enter into oversold territories at the exact bear market bottom. And we also saw a very similar thing this time around. Back during June 2022, the Ethereum RSI on the weekly time frame entered into oversold territories, which also happened right at the bear market bottom. But if you're looking at the weekly Ethereum RSI right now, this is actually pulling back to the downside, similar to what we saw back here during around 2019. And so once again, 2019 was somewhat of a transitionary year between the bear market and the bull market. It wasn't really a major bear market or bull market during 2019. It was a lot of upside and downside price action. And so that is potentially what 2023 is, but leading into 2024 and beyond, that could flip much more bullish after that Bitcoin halving once again. And so essentially right now, we are potentially entering into that final stage of accumulation, that final opportunity, like what we saw late 2019 and early 2020, just before the next halving cycle. And now, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe down below, and let me know in the comments section if you enjoy these type of long-term prediction videos, because if you enjoy them, obviously I'll be sure to make more of them over time. And of course, check out these videos popping up right here on your screen if you're new to the channel. But anyway, that's everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all in the next video.